Magdalene's blog 50. He tried to feed Mary some food before getting her onto the donkey, but she didn't respond, so he loaded the donkey with his baggage instead, packing it to be able to secure Mary against it once he had got her back up. He was acutely aware they needed to move off as soon as possible. With a big effort and only a little assistance from the woman he was trying to help, Johannes managed to get Mary up onto the donkey, sitting her sideways and strapped as best he could to the load beside her. Grateful for this success at least, he took the donkey's leading rein and started to pull her down the road, wondering all the while what he had committed himself to. The splitting of the road seemed to take an age to reach, but eventually they came to it and took the turn to the right towards the west. It was a hard day's toil for Johannes, trudging single-mindedly on this road, avoiding any kind of contact with people whenever possible, and when it wasn't he would hurry through the place before the urchins who inevitably came to pester him for whatever they could get would realize what the donkey's burden was and hurry off to tell some grown-up. When he stopped, it was to check on Mary and give them both something to drink. He worried that she appeared to have fallen into a fever. Maybe it would be more than he could do to get her to tire at all. At least he had enough water for both, and was able to stop at a small stream to fill his skins up. And he ate some of the provisions his companions had left, though Mary would take nothing. It was his feet that were starting to suffer badly, sore and blistered from the relentless trek that was unlike anything he was used to, and with little relief from the fierce heat for the rest of him. He didn't doubt what he was doing, though. There was no other option than to help get Mary to tire after what she had done for him. Without her, he would still be following after that so-called Magus Simon. How completely changed his view of that man was now. Somehow he had managed to escape the venomous attacks that followed on from Mary's night of horror, but his family had then been targeted as well. His father had stood strong, with the aid of his friends and contacts in the city guard, and as a result he and Johannes grew closer than they had been in years. For this, and for opening his eyes to Simon's real nature, Johannes felt his debt to Mary deeply, and he wouldn't relinquish it without making his best effort to help her. The troubles with the Magus disciples died away, but it had seemed a good idea for Johannes to travel to Bethany in Judea and pay an extended visit to his aunt and uncle there. Now this, he thought ruefully. The chance to put things right, though. As the afternoon wore on, each hill, each upslope got harder to climb than the last, and they stretched out seemingly interminably ahead of him. Eventually the road passed beside a small stand of trees, and gratefully Johannes took advantage of the shade they provided like countless travellers before him on this road. He knew that they would need to travel through the night, but first he must let the donkey rest, and eat and drink, and himself and Mary too. Carefully he lowered her from the back of his donkey, and propped her up against the base of a tree, before trying to do something about his feet. Under the trees on that road to Tyre, the small fire he managed to make helped him relax, and he must have slept because he woke with a start, from a dream, but one that slipped quickly out of his memory's reach. Mary was sleeping fitfully as well, and the stars were beginning to break through the darkening sky. This was as good a place as anywhere to camp, and normally he would have been glad to have stayed the night here. But now, though, he feared for Mary, and he knew that they couldn't rest for long. She was quiet, but so pale, as though all life was draining out of her. He couldn't bear to see her livid sores and other hurts. The more he looked, the more everything about her was telling him that she wouldn't last much longer. Sudden desperation seized him, and forced him to get up from the comfort of lying by the fire, to get them going again. It took a great effort to get her dead weight to lie face down across the donkey's back, but eventually he succeeded. Panting and sweating, he set about final preparations, kicking dusty soil over the last embers of the fire. Feeling stiff and tired down to the very boot sandals he had strapped his protesting feet into, he proceeded to push one of them in front of the other into the gathering coldness of the night, pulling the donkey and its load behind him. There was a growing moon that would make following the way easy, and gradually Johannes's legs loosened enough to make the progress quite brisk. In the night he stopped as they reached the crest of one ridge, allowing himself and his donkey a break from their labours. Mary seemed hot one minute and cold the next, and had been groaning on the upward climb, though she showed no sign of gaining consciousness as he lifted her off her donkey's back. He would need to arrange her in a better position. Able to use the lie of the ground, he got Mary up sideways again, like she had been in the morning, but couldn't find a way to strap her there securely. Again he struggled with her shivering body and managed to swivel her around, getting one leg over the rump to sit her astride the donkey's back, and leaned her forward onto the baggage behind the donkey's neck. Swiftly he pulled out a couple of woolen shawls to help secure her in place and keep her warm as well. The moon was still riding high in the sky, while dipping low onto the western horizon, a resplendent Venus pointed the direction they must go. Despite everything, Johannes's spirits began to rise. The downward slope allowed a good pace, which he was able to continue up the next ridge. Mary was still more or less fixed in the same position, but that was the only good thing that Johannes could see about her condition. This was his moment to give his best effort, and he was glad to be doing so. Despite the tiredness nagging at him, telling him he should stop and rest or even sleep, he carried on. He simply had to get her to Temple in Tyre. Eventually, a welcome dawn crept up the sky behind, as they passed through a village waking to the new day. Cocks crowed from out in the countryside, and Johannes decided it must be time to take another break. The morning that followed was a continuing trial for man and beast as the heat of the sun once again started to beat down on them. Traffic increased on the road, and the countryside looked much more prosperous. Johannes sensed that they were getting close. Those last miles into the outskirts of Tyre hurt the most. For instead of reaching his goal and being able to rest, he continually found out there was further to go, always further. Much as he might want to give up, he couldn't, not now. Mary was unconscious, and Johannes didn't dare look at her for fear that she had in fact slipped away from this life completely. He trailed seemingly forever down one street after another, shunned by all around, which made it difficult to get directions. Once or twice he even had to turn back the way he had already come, and that was very hard. But finally he did round a corner and knew he really had got where he had spent day and night striving to reach, had managed to get them both there. Enormous relief poured through him, even though his feet were so sore and his legs ached in every muscle and sinew. Almost joyously he knocked on the ancient wooden doors as loudly as he was able. The woman that opened them surveyed the dishevelled state of the traveller standing there, and wondered whether she should just close them again. But then she noticed the crumpled letter scroll he was clutching in his hand, and relented. Minutes passed like an age as Johannes waited for a response to the letter he had delivered, sitting slumped on a low wall. He had got Mary off the donkey, and was relieved to find her not only alive, but willing and able to drink some water. That was all he could do. The priestess Rachel came hurrying to the gate as soon as she read the letter from her old friend Ariane. It had obviously been written in great haste, and told of a friend in great need. Seeing Mary for herself, Rachel could see that things were worse than even Ariane could have imagined for the one-time priestess. Rachel knew that the best chance of saving her was indeed to get her to the house of the other Rachel, the healer, her friend.